Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well, depending on where you're at. Another series of calamitous events going on, or I guess depending on where you're located. We were it's reasonably lucky with where we're at here in Portland. We had power gone for a few days, but we're obviously back online now, which can't be said for everybody in the area. And I know there's a lot of you in different places that were experiencing similar kinds of things. So, as if we didn't have enough to deal with as it already was, throw a few more challenges in there. At any rate, hopefully, we're all kind of getting caught up from any effects from that and whatnot. I'm just now getting kind of caught back up to where we were prior to everything going on. And so that kind of leads me to what I wanted to talk about here, and I don't want to take up too much time, but once again, I thought it was probably a bit easier for me to do a quick video and be able to explain, kind of talk about some of these things rather than writing out an extensive, dry email that's going to put any reasonable person to sleep. So, very hopeful that you all are going to see this, and it'll kind of be, I don't know, maybe the beginning of a conversation depending on what your reactions are like, but I can't actually imagine that there's going to be too many negative reactions to what I'm going to talk about. So let's give that a shot. We are, at this point, it's Friday, wrapping up week 7, which is hard enough to believe as it is, but that does mean, as you're probably already aware, that we're going into week 8 next week. And week 8 now is bringing on the second midterm exam, just with the way that we're set up. So we have our 2 midterms. We'll be doing this second one next week. Then we'll be wrapping things up, and during finals week, we'll be going into the short essay version. I'll surely send you another video as that gets a little bit closer to talk to that. For the time being, I want to talk about the midterm that we have coming up next week. So we had our first go around a few weeks back, you surely remember, and results were kind of across the board. I don't remember what I had indicated to many of you sort of individually versus what I kind of put out there collectively or generally to everybody in the class. So just kind of a quick summary of some of the aspects of what that first midterm exam was all about, what it looked like, and kind of where we're going from there. You surely got the messages that I had initially hoped to kind of put a study guide together for you at that point, but then with the exam being essentially a random selection from a test bank for each one of you. So every time the test was pulled up in Canvas, there was an algorithm that just went through, grabbed a number of items per chapter pertaining to the stuff that we're covering, and in essence, every single one of you received a different version of the test because of that, which also makes it impossible to actually write a study guide for without just saying the textbook. The textbook is your study guide, which is probably less than helpful. So my intentions coming into this next midterm, at least initially, was I was going to go through and make it absolutely not random. I was going to go through item by item by item and basically write the exam myself. And it would be the same exam for every single individual, same questions, same items, and it would also allow me to create a study guide that would be meaningful and actually helpful in that regard. And it's a lovely thought, a good idea, good plan. And then we got another stick in the spokes here this last week, with my being out for a handful of days, many of you being out for potentially more or less than that too. And so it got me to rethinking what the most appropriate approach to going into this next exam is going to be, time-wise, for my ability to go in and to completely rewrite an entire exam and then to write a full study guide that's relevant to preparing for that exam. Would take an extraordinary amount of time, and that's perfectly fine on my end, but probably less so on your end, because it's already Friday leading into that next week. It doesn't leave you a lot of time to utilize that and to prepare. So in thinking about that, the conclusion that I've arrived at, and I think it's one that I think you hopefully will find quite agreeable, is that in the most pragmatic sense, I think the best approach going into this next exam is not to leave it as the first one was. I was not comfortable with the way that was constructed, and I don't think you were big fans of it either. And because we don't have the time to take the approach I just described, a sort of practical solution that presents itself then is for me to go in and, rather than doing this next exam that same way that we did the first, my plan going forward into next week is I'm going to remove the Proctorio filter. So you will not have to go through Proctorio. You will not have to sign in with Proctorio. You will not have to have your ID, any of it. You would just go into Canvas the same way that you go in to take the quizzes or to read through the materials, discussion boards, that kind of thing. You'll find midterm number 2 in the module for week 8, and you still can take it at any time during the window that it's available. But not having to go through Proctorio then will allow you to then access the questions on your own. And so with that also comes, you're going to be welcome to use your notes, the textbook, the resources that you have at hand to take this exam, rather than having it be sort of closed notebook, closed, etc. You get the idea. It does, in a trade-off, mean that it initially had been set to run for 110 minutes, which, for all intents and purposes, when it comes to an exam like this, is basically like a limitless amount of time. When I went in and was looking through even the first midterm, it's pretty much exactly what you would anticipate, even in like an in-class exam, that sort of thing. 96% of you were done in 20 some minutes with the first one, and then handfuls of you taking a bit more time. Because I can't sort of leave a limitless time period with all of your books and all of your notes, and everybody gets A pluses and that kind of thing, that doesn't really make for a legitimate or fair exam. So rather than having this sort of expansive period of time, I don't want to pull it down so it's super tight or overly stressful in that regard. So my conclusion through everything that I've been able to work with is to try and pull that back to a 45-minute window, which still, for most of you, is probably twice as long as it actually took to take the first go around. And especially with your resources then available to you, you're probably going to spend even less time having to really, really try and dig through the deep, dark recesses of your mind, when you can kind of flip through and try to find the relevant stuff. So that's my proposition to you all. And because of the nature of this, if we were in an in-class face-to-face situation, I would list our sort of options up on the board and then throw it out to a democratic vote. It's not really a viable option because of our situation. And so in this regard, I'm more or less making an executive decision to move forward in that way. So no Proctorio, no proctoring. You will log directly in. There should be no access code, but do understand that once you get into the exam, it's a one-time only thing. The timer starts as soon as you get in, so it's not something you can come back to or redo or that sort of a thing. It's a one-shot thing, so it's the same in that regard. There'll be a 45-minute delay, a 45-minute limit put on to the exam itself. Of course, with the exception for people who have accommodations, I'll make sure that those all get put in for those individuals too. And then we'll essentially proceed that way. Now, what I want to put out there is, just because I'm sort of changing the rules in the middle of the game here, even though I think it's a pretty agreeable option for all of you, it's not, you're not monolithic, and there's not everyone's going to feel exactly the same about it. So if you're comfortable with this approach and are happy to go with it, do it to it. It should all be there. It should be very clear as to how to go about it and the like. If, on the other hand, you have any apprehension about this change, If you have any thoughts or worries, concerns, etc., I guess what I would ask is to please just individually reach out to me directly and express whatever concern or whatever the case may be, and then we can, directly hammer those things out and get it taken care of that way. If I don't hear anything from you, I'm going to go on the running assumption that this works, that we're all on the same page, and that's how we're going to work it. So that's the big change. I'm trying to think if there's anything, since I already have you right here, that I ought to be speaking to. I mean, I think that's the big one. That's what's on everybody's minds at the current moment. Outside of that, I'm going to be playing catch up on a lot of your sort of discussion forums and that. That's the fun part for me, because I actually get to see what you're writing and what you're thinking and interacting and that. So now that I'm back online and have some more time, I'll be getting caught up on working on the discussion forums. And outside of that, I think we're clipping right along. We're doing pretty well, and hard to believe we're going to be in week 8 already, but that's just the way it goes. So I've already now talked about this for how long? Over 10 minutes. So I'll leave it at that. As I say, please just reach out to me if you have questions or concerns, anything like that. And otherwise, keep on keeping on, keep up the good work. By God, we're going to make it through another term, I think. So I hope you and yours are all well, and we will talk soon. All right, take care.